When I came to America, I was 14 months old. After the fall of Saigon in April 1975, my family escaped by my dad's fishing boat after the fall of Saigon and escaped communist Vietnam. Addiction to food and sugar, a lot of that is here in our brain, right? The right combination of sugar, salt, and fat and lots of processed food is what is triggering that. When it comes to childhood obesity, you have an intervention that involves the family. So the change has to come from the parents, the guardians. They're the ones with a budget. They're the ones that go grocery shopping and provide the food and the drinks. A lot of times we confuse hunger cues with thirst cues because it's very similar. In adults in particular, it's been shown that about 75% of adults are actually dehydrated because we're not drinking enough fluids.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. On today's episode, I have another amazing, fantastic guest. Her name is Katrina Nguyen. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you very much, Luki, for having me on your show.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So a quick intro on Katrina. So she's actually a doctor. I'm sorry. Dr. Katrina Nguyen is an award-winning board-certified pediatric gastroenterologist, a two-time best-selling author and founder, founder of Faithful to Fitness, a nonprofit to fight childhood obesity. Her Christian faith drives her to serve others. She lives in Illinois with her husband and enjoys being a dog mom, gardening, and traveling. So welcome to our podcast, Dr. Katrina. Nice to have you.
Thank you. I look forward to sharing my story with your audience.
Yes, thank you so much. I love everything going on your mantle. There's so much cool stuff.
So much culture and all my favorite things.
I love it.
I like to collect dolls wherever I travel, and then somewhere in there's Darth Vader from far, far away.
Darth Vader. That is awesome. I've heard. I know someone else who also collects like dolls. Like I think she's also a doctor. Is there something with doctors collecting dolls? She's also a medical doctor.
I think when I was younger, that was like a lot of my sister's friends would come, and my little brother would get cars and other toys, and my little sister and I would get dolls, but we didn't really know how to play with the dolls. So as I got older, I was like, oh, I need to get my own dolls, the dolls I want, that I can actually play with, and
my money and my specification, what I actually want.
Yeah. Plus, it's just nice to go there and say, I was there and I bought it there, right? So
I know, right?
Yeah.
I love that. I love it. I love it. Awesome. Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Katrina. So let's just go into it. Can you please tell us about yourself, your background, what was growing up like? How do you see yourself? Just everything about you.
So I am a pediatric gastroenterologist. I graduated medical school in 2002. When I came to America, I was 14 months old. After the fall of Saigon in April 1975, my family escaped by my dad's fishing boat after the fall of Saigon and escaped communist Vietnam. We were eventually rescued by a humanitarian ship and brought to the Philippines, and eventually flown to Guam, where it was our first U.S. settlement. But during that journey, I nearly died twice. Once during the transfer to the boat from my dad's to the ship from my dad's fishing boat, and another time because I was very sick in the refugee camp and required emergency surgery. So that's background to my story. People always say, what does my story mean to me as far as how I see my purpose? And I feel that God's given me many chances from the time I was a child to young adult, and really finding a way to help other people get second chances as well.
That is amazing.
Well, thank you.
I wonder how your parents, your mom, your dad must have felt during the period, like the near-death experiences you had. That must have been very terrifying for them as well.
Yeah, and I don't think I appreciated, their level of fear, and until I was much older, probably in college, because I would hear stories from people that would visit and say, because I'm one of 10 kids, so a lot of times relatives wouldn't remember all of our names, and they would just remember what happened to us. And they would say, oh, is that the girl that nearly died in Guam? And it got me curious, like, what do you mean I nearly died in Guam? So I had really a greater appreciation as a doctor taking care of kids. in the US, where there was better medical care versus when I was an infant and a toddler. Yeah.
Wow, that's
hmm
amazing. Growing up in an immigrant household, how was it like? Did you see your parents go through like challenges, or how did they
hmm
overcome all of the challenges
hmm
with living in a new country?
My earliest memory was in preschool, kindergarten, in Louisiana, when I recall just my there's a 20-year difference between my oldest brother and my youngest brother, and how my siblings would have to kind of adjust their school schedule and classes in order to help my parents take care of the younger kids so they could work. So those are some of the struggles. Learning a new language. My dad trying to take English as a second language courses, and he would learn words and sentences, and 2 weeks later he forget what he learned. Had to learn something new. So he had to find jobs that were manual labor because he couldn't really get into professional jobs that were but require language skills and communication. Same thing with my mom. I would say that I would look around as I got older and think about my childhood and say, we always got what we needed, not what we wanted. So, not many toys, not many like major extravagant vacations. And most of the time, if we went anywhere as a family, we would drive places or take the train. It wasn't like my first flight anywhere was after I finished college. And I was like, wow. And all these little kids I knew, even my nieces and nephews, like, oh, they're flying with their little suitcases, like 5 years old. And I'm like, I never had that. So that's the story. But I think growing up that way, you just had a greater, appreciation for things that you needed, and just very judicious about your own spending and using your treasures and your blessings to help others, not just like living extravagantly. Yeah.
Wow.
hmm
So how was it with your siblings as well? Did they have their own unique challenges or struggles? Because I assume, what was your position in the family?
So I am the eighth child of
Okay.
10, and I have a
Okay.
younger sister and a younger brother.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I would say that my oldest five had a lot more responsibilities in
Mhm.
terms of going to school, proving that they can be successful, and also time management. So they also had to find like odd jobs, some summer jobs, things like that, just to help out the family or help out themselves with, for the things that they needed, regarding school, whether it's supplies, things that my parents, couldn't afford, the extra things that other
Yeah.
kids would probably take for granted. Like my parents can pay for that. And it's like maybe we had to let go of extracurricular activities that otherwise, we wouldn't, other kids would be fine. Like an example for my sisters, I remember, I wanted to play an instrument, and my older two sisters wanted to play instrument too. So they got to play like violin, right? And when it came to me, I took classical music because I couldn't play an instrument, you know.
Mm.
And for instance, like I wanted to travel to sing in the choir, and I qualified for chamber singers, but my parents couldn't afford for me to do travel singing with my school because of uniforms and the cost of traveling. So those are just little things where you just had to understand that it wasn't like they didn't support your extracurricular activities,
Mhm.
but it was outside of their budget. Yeah.
Right, that's so
Yeah.
true. And I see
Yeah.
that you mentioned that as well, because even for me, I grew up in Nigeria. I'm originally from Nigeria, right? And I'm
hmm
also from a big family. I'm one out of nine kids,
hmm
similar to yours, I guess. One of the younger ones, the seventh, position. And growing up, I saw my dad, my mom work so hard to provide for us. We didn't lack anything. We weren't wealthy in the
hmm
sense of being wealthy, but at least we had our basic needs provided for. And I remember I wanted to join the brownie. In Nigeria, we have this thing just like Girl Scout. It's called
hmm
brownies. I
hmm
really wanted to join the brownie. I love their uniforms. I love
hmm
their hat. I love how they did, how they style,
hmm
all of that. And I begged my dad. I was like, I want to join the brownie. Can you register me? But he said no. I didn't need it. Like he wasn't
hmm
critical, right, to my education, and I didn't understand it as a child. Like I was so mad. I was so sad, right? But looking back now, I'm like, yeah, they had a lot on their plates. Like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
brownie
Yeah.
was just.
It's like not, they didn't need one more thing on their plate, you know?
No, you don't need that. Wow. Thanks for sharing that background. So I want us to go into your, academic and career life. So what prompted you to go into medicine? Why did you study medicine? I mean, I think doctors are the greatest, most selfless, most fantastic kind of people there are. Your profession is so giving, helping take care of others. So, what motivated that choice to go into medicine?
Well, I recall probably as early as eighth grade that I had a passion for science. And at that time, I didn't necessarily think it was going to be medicine, but I knew I wanted to go into a career that involved science. And then in the summer after eighth grade, I got to like a summer job at a fire department. And once I worked with the fire department, I toured through the first responders area where they were taking 911 calls and met a
Mhm.
lot of people that work in the field. And I felt like I wanted to make that difference to help people. So then I volunteered in college at a hospital in the ER for 6 months and the neonatal ICU for 2.5 years. Watched, followed around doctors and nurses on the weekends and just loved like the difference that they were making in especially kids lives.
Mhm.
And so I saw myself, I wanted to do that. I worked in a research lab in college, but I felt like my passion was to be with people, not just work in the lab. But that's really where it started. But I also remember my childhood story, like having surgery in the refugee camp and being saved by doctors and nurses, and that was just ignited the passion, not just the academic pursuit, but really finding my purpose. Is like, you were saved as a kid in healthcare. Without those people, you wouldn't be here. And I saw it was like my way of giving back to other children as well.
Wow, that's so noble. Wow. So that informed your decision not only to go into medicine but into pediatric
Mm-hmm.
gastroenterologist.
No.
That is such a
Yeah.
complicated word to pronounce. so so what was the motivation behind founding your nonprofit? So your nonprofit is to help fight childhood obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Um I mean, I always hate to draw this parallel, but I compare where I come from in Africa to like when I moved to the US, I saw, how different people looked, right?
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
terms of like their maybe bodily image or configuration or structure.
Mm-hmm.
So what motivated you founding that nonprofit and also trying to fight childhood obesity? And what are the statistics really on childhood obesity?
Mm-hmm. So my nonprofit is called Faithful to Fitness. It was established in November 6, 2014. So we've just passed the 10-year mark since it was
Mhm.
founded. I started to think about childhood obesity intervention in like 2012, and that was in Augusta, Georgia, where I talked to many families and counseled kids on the risk of chronic disease such as type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease in relation to obesity, and in particular childhood obesity. I think with children, especially with chronic illness, and it's an opportunity for prevention, intervention, and to reverse, the complications that are
Mhm.
related to obesity compared to the opportunity that is not as available or as effective in adults. In their 40s and 50s, you might change some habits, you might be able to reverse something, but a lot of times it's much more difficult. So that's where I focused on children. Also, when it comes to childhood obesity, you have an intervention that involves the family. So the change has to come from the parents, the guardians. They're the ones
Mhm.
with a budget. They're the ones that go grocery shopping and provide the food and the drinks, and also how active the family is together, lifestyle changes, making those healthcare decisions together. So that's where my passion started. I do think that on average over the last like 30 years, anywhere from 20 to 30% of children and adolescents are defined by the Centers for Disease Control as having a body mass index in the overweight to obesity range. And there's been many links to chronic disease, as I mentioned, to type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, fatty liver disease, sleep apnea, arthritis, right? And on top of that, body image issues and mental health challenges like bullying and
Mhm.
anxiety, social anxiety, and depression. And so I think that the cost of healthcare, even if you just look at one chronic disease like type 2 diabetes, there's a link of anywhere from 30 to 50% range of type 2 diabetes newly diagnosed each year to being overweight or obese. Many studies in 2023 in Forbes Health, looked at the CDC statistics, and it showed that if someone has obesity-related health problem, they spend on average about $1,800 more per year versus someone who's not in the overweight obese range. If you want to talk about saving money in healthcare, that's one area that's going to make a big difference for the family, for the community, and for the country.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting. When I think of, as adults, they tell us be mindful of what you eat because it could affect, the functioning of your organs. So I didn't know it applied to children as well because children have
Mm-hmm.
high metabolic rates. I
Mm-hmm.
thought, they eat sugar. Sugar isn't ideal, I know, but whatever they eat, they burn it off because they play, they're very active, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you're saying that even for children, some of those diseases can be
Mm-hmm.
prevented by just having them eat right.
Eat right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Because the other thing too is to realize that with the advancement of technology, we don't really move as much as we did, 2 to 3
True,
decades ago. So, for
true.
example, when I was a child and in the 80s, my sister and I would walk to school, 15-20 minute walk every morning, every afternoon. And later in high school, we would walk to the bus and the bus would take us to school. But nowadays, many kids get rides to school. They hardly walk. And then many of my patients, at times throughout the year, they may not even get recess, or a physical education class. So the opportunity for physical activity every single day at school is taken away. And unless we're investing time for that as a family and as an individual, sometimes it doesn't happen. And there's also the other thing with technology is screen time.
Yes.
How many
Yes.
kids have smartphones very early, tablets? They learn how to use that, and they're experts at that over their parents. They have computers, they have laptops. They do their work even on the computer instead of handwriting. So many kids don't even know how to handwrite cursive, right? Because that's all they know is the computer and the screen. And then they get home and they watch TV and YouTube channels and you name it, right? Social media. So the screen time, the lack of activity, not moving very much, lots of sugary beverages and high calorie but not as nutritious food. Those are all things that certainly contribute to the rise in obesity and in particular childhood obesity.
Interesting. And that's so true about like kids these days aren't active anymore because growing up, like we played outside, right? We
Mm-hmm.
play with the neighborhood, the kids, and everyone comes together. There was not much to entertain us than ourselves. We just had to
Mm-hmm.
get going.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, Dr. Katrina, are there lots of research going on the impact of like these screen times and like tablets and all of these, the impact on our children, on this generation? Because have there been like long-term studies, and are there ways, things that can be done to combat it, like not just from them not being active, but also maybe their eyes, like they're glued to something, like just
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
eyesight, or even their brain, like
Mm-hmm.
do they become duller because they are not engaging, like learning, actively doing something? Are there
Well,
researches like that?
certainly, yeah, there's many studies that show just the screen time itself, lots of stimulation.
Mm,
Um, when we talk to like feeding therapists, for example, many kids who have struggled with like sensory to different foods, they also have linked that to screen time. And so, because of the stimulation in the past, a child might try a new food, and after 3 to 5 tries, they will actually accept it and like it. But now it could be like 20 to 30 times because of the
wow.
overstimulation from screen time. The other thing is with screen time, and especially like social media, for instance, and interaction with other people, there's lots of bullying online and also body image as well. So those are things that certainly affect the child as far as comparing themselves to other people, right? Or people talking down to them and making them feel bad about themselves.
Mhm.
So from the mental health perspective, definitely, yeah.
Definitely. Wow. Wow. Interesting. I hope parents are probably, I'm not a parent yet, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just hoping that parents are, really working towards changing this, not just because I know it's temporal, because it's easy to give a child, tablets to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy themselves just so that you distract them that way, and then you can get worked on, but in the long run, it's actually posing a lot of issues. Okay, so Dr. Katrina, so for parents, how can they effectively ensure they are feeding their children good food, nutritious food? And I've heard stories of maybe a parent trying to enforce, you know, healthy diet to their kids, to their children, because children love sweets, right? A child
Mm-hmm.
will want to eat anything that, they want sweet, they want all the unhealthy food.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard stories of maybe parents, I think I don't know if I watched it or I heard it, where this lady was talking about her mom she said when she was a young kid, that she kind of was obese. She had, a lot of weight. And her mom, in trying to help her, kind of started locking up the pantry, right? So lock up the snack drawer and wouldn't let her get into the snacks or even some food, only gave her like broccoli, like the healthy food. And for her, she didn't like it. And
Mm-hmm.
looking back as an adult, she still felt like it was wrong for her mom to do that because she
Mm-hmm.
felt shamed,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can parents like help their children, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds
Yeah.
eat right?
I always encourage, if it's to that level of, yeah, challenge, then speaking to a dietitian for sure would be very helpful, and also speaking to a psychologist, because it's really more about a healthy relationship with food. Addiction to food and sugar, those a lot of that is here in our brain, right? The right combination of sugar, salt, and fat and lots of processed food is triggering that. I always say the first thing in my nonprofit is to start with just cutting out sugary beverages, because if we do that, that's one step in fighting the addiction to other foods. So drink as much water as possible. A lot of times we confuse hunger cues with thirst cues, because it's very similar. In adults in particular, it's been shown that about 75% of adults are actually dehydrated because we're not drinking enough fluids. So I encourage that. The other thing is, don't expect the child to accept the food on the plate the first time, or
Mm-hmm.
even the third
Mm-hmm.
time or the fifth time. But it's important to have exposure. When you create a plate, make it colorful, and even if you put the food, the carrots or the fruits or whatever on the plate, it's an exposure. It doesn't mean the child has to eat it, right? Looking at it as an exposure. So I would count that as an exposure. Maybe the
Okay.
parent will end up eating that fruit or vegetable, but the child is on their plate. And then you reward them like, oh wow, I'm so happy that you allowed me to put that on your plate, and reinforce the positive thing we accomplished at dinner. Don't fuss about it. And then balance it, like, with protein and fruits, vegetables, the grains, right? Little bit of dairy. But really, the starting out with cutting out sugary beverages is really the first step in our program, and probably the easiest thing to do, because it's not even food, it's just drinking the right fluids first. Yep.
I see. I see.
Um, and so, yeah, so I encourage that quite often. But certainly, I've talked to many dietitians who have had patients come in and say the child and the parent is battling over locking up the pantry or putting a lock
Mm-hmm.
on the fridge because of snacking at night, this and that. It's like it becomes a mental battle, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
creating more rift between the child and the parent. Help the
Yeah.
child have a healthy relationship with the food, and allow them to have a sense of control over their choices, because as they get older, you can't control any of that, right? One other thing I encourage is to involve the child or the teenager in meal prepping.
Okay.
So what I've found is, over time, many of the foods that if the parent cooked by themselves and the child feels like they didn't get a choice on what vegetable or what fruit or what protein was put in that dish,
Mm-hmm.
they won't eat it because something was put in there that they will never eat, right? But if you involve the child in meal prepping, then they can have a choice, and they also will be exposed, because they're touching and adding things. They're actually looking at it, right? Touching some of these ingredients and being involved in making the choice on what goes into their meals. And over time, they'll realize it's actually okay. It tastes okay. It looks okay. It smells okay. And they're more accepting. So lots of families struggle with cooking together, and we just need to go back to doing more of that together.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually true. And involving them in meal prep. There's this Instagram page I follow, and then this mom actually cooks with her little kid, like a 1-year-old boy, like
Yeah,
as she's cooking. Of course, he's not cooking, but like she tries to make him feel like he is. So when she's
yeah.
chopping the vegetables, his hand is on the. It's so cute and funny.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, like, for instance, if we say you put on a video or have a tablet for the kid, well, why
Mhm.
do that? Get them involved in the kitchen or at the
Involved.
table.
True.
Help make them feel like they're helping you out with your chores, right? The same thing, like it was laundry, for instance. And that instead of doing laundry by yourself and feeling burdened, help them, put their laundry in there, help them fill the soap, right? That kind of thing. Any task, any chore that you have, make it fun, involve your child, and it will be much better for you because you're allowing them to participate in being helpful.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Okay, I wanted us to talk about your faith journey because when I read your intro, you talked about your faith, inspires you to serve others. What is it about your faith? Can you dig a bit into that?
Mm-hmm. So I grew up Catholic. Two of my brothers are Catholic priests, so I've never known any other faith. I'm always reminded about, Jesus teaching about love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think of how can I show that? How can I do more of that? And I also think about how we are all blessed with our time, our talent, and treasure. And everything that we own is from God, and it's just you're the person that is providing, using that to glorify God and for the salvation of souls. And so I never look at anything that I own as something is mine, is God's blessings, and I can't take it with me from this world. So whatever I can use to bless other people, to glorify God, to make a difference, leave a legacy, make an impact in the world, not just make an income. And that's what drives me as a Christian, to every day think about making a difference and making the most of God's blessings in my life to make a difference in the world.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so noble. Yeah. It just reminds me of what Jesus said. He said, the greatest amongst you will be the servant of all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Jesus modeled it for us. And as Christians, it's nice and it's great when we do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for someone like in your profession. I mean, being a doctor, I mean, it's a very prestigious kind of profession, but
Yeah.
regardless of that, you're still like really humble and willing to serve others, serve
Mm-hmm.
the community. I think it's very, very, very commendable.
Thank
Um,
you. I
yeah.
think, one of the things I've noticed over 2 decades in healthcare is whenever I've been offered an opportunity for moving up in like leadership ladder, it's never been something that drew me to it. I was never like seeking that. And what I enjoy is servant leadership, as you said,
Mm.
because really people see that. Like if you are actually doing for someone, something that you're asking them to do for others, that's more powerful than just telling them, oh, do this, do that, right? They're seeing you as an example. So I'm very passionate about that, being a servant first, and then through that people will follow your lead. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's true. So I wanted to ask about your nonprofit. So what exactly do you do in the community?
Hmm.
And does your line of profession, your specialty, does it help you also with your nonprofit, like educating, like, moms, parents, the community on the importance of like having a good digestive
Hmm.
health?
Hmm. So a pediatric gastroenterologist, you know, when I compare it to an adult gastroenterologist, is that there's opportunities for nutrition education and prevention. We do
Okay.
procedures for children if needed, but we don't do
Mhm.
as much like screening procedures, more diagnosis. We take care of, many conditions that are related to nutrition and digestion. And it's important to counsel parents from the time the baby is born, right? From the breast milk to the formulas to looking at allergies, intolerance, gluten problems like celiac, inflammation like Crohn's disease, colitis, ulcers, reflux, digestive issues like constipation or diarrhea, bleeding. So those are just some different examples. I would say overall, compared to adult gastroenterologists, we don't see as much and diagnose as much cancer, but we do see it with certain inflammatory conditions. And so with my nonprofit focused on childhood obesity intervention and reversal of chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes, certainly good nutrition counseling and physical activity. Those relate to my specialty and how it ties into my work for my nonprofit. Yeah.
I see. I see. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that's nice. So this nonprofit, do you have like a location
Mm-hmm.
or do
Mm-hmm.
you, okay.
I
So
live
how
in
do you
Loves.
publicize
Yeah.
it? How do people know to
Yeah.
seek help?
So I live in Loves Park, Illinois, and
Okay.
currently we just have the nonprofit located here in Loves Park, Rockford,
Mhm.
Illinois. So Northern Illinois, about an hour outside of Chicago, an hour outside of Milwaukee, Madison. What we do is I'm partnered with different community businesses like gyms and grocery stores, culinary partners, farms, dietitians, medical students. And every Saturday for an hour, we exercise with parents, guardians, and the children and their siblings.
Nice.
And it's
Nice.
group fitness. It does not involve any equipment, things that they could do at home. We teach like aerobic, cardiac type exercise, and we also do like core yoga, relaxation, just teaching them to move, right, and take care of their body and stretch. And also, it's about doing it together. So finding something that they enjoy out of all the different classes and instructors that volunteer. We do a meal prep class with the help of culinary partners in the community. So we do freezer meal preps and teach kids to like see different colors, try different fruits, vegetables, proteins, adding spices, and mashing it together and showing them that if they took a day out of the week and meal prep together, put it in the freezer, it takes 30 minutes to thaw or defrost, and then the
Mhm.
time to make a meal is less when you get home. So you're not as tempted to just do the drive-through or go pick something up at the restaurant. Take kids to grocery shopping with a dietitian and give them a small budget and teach them that they can actually eat healthy on a small budget, and learning how to read food labels and making healthier choices than they have. So small steps at a time, taking to the farm so that they see where food is grown, how to pick vegetables and make a salad together, teach them how to make a vinaigrette with the help of farm instructors. Those are just some examples of ways that we are exposing the families to opportunities that are totally free because of the contribution of time, talent, or treasure from our partners. And my goal in the next, 5 to 6 years is to help expand what I've done for 10 years here to
Mhm.
other cities and make
I
it
see.
available. So I do like conferences, I do podcasts, and I've written books to share the blueprint of this can be done. It's not specific to a clinic or a hospital or a community. It can be involved, and other community partners can be involved to create the same thing we did here.
Wow, I love that. I love that. I
Yeah,
love that. I love it because it's so much awareness being created. Because some people they don't know how to eat right, right? They
yeah,
don't know the
yeah.
right food for their bodies. They don't know all of these things. But, with your nonprofit, being able to just provide them that knowledge and arm
Mm-hmm.
them, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope you're able to spread out to other cities, other states. Yeah, because I
Yeah,
don't think I've heard anything like what you're describing right now.
yeah. And
Um,
I mean, I was on like two different podcasts probably about 2 months ago, and
mhm.
one the host was from England and the other one was from France, and they were fascinated by my blueprint. So they said you should
Yeah.
come to our country, our continent, and teach it here because they see a need for it.
Yeah.
But I've always believed that obesity, childhood obesity, is something that doesn't require medication or referral to surgery. I just believe that if we go back to the basics of lifestyle, diet and healthy living, being active, making healthy choices,
Mhm.
and really creating the good relationship with food, like eat when you're hungry, not eat when you're craving, right? And going back to whole foods and not things from the box, all that stuff. So it's easy to just grab that snack in the pantry, but
Mhm.
it's actually, take time, go to your fridge and look for those whole foods and fruits and vegetables
Yeah.
and try to combine that. So
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. And honestly, it has to start with the parents, right?
yeah.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
why what you're doing is very crucial because if the parents aren't educated, they don't know, right? They go to the stores each time they go grocery, they buy the processed food like the granola, like whatever it is, the cereals and all that, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's all the kids know. You wouldn't blame the kids because when they start having just that type of food at a
Mm-hmm.
young age, that's what their palate knows, and that's all they would
Mm-hmm.
be drawn to. But
Mm-hmm.
if they, actually I have a friend who recently started introducing, she changed her whole lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
She started, eating healthy, cutting out meat from her diet. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's trying to go vegan. So she's trying to have a lot of replacement for, things, maybe meat. She's trying to replace it with mushrooms and all that. And she's also gradually introducing it to her kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a struggle to get the kids to come on board, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure eventually they probably will. And I know maybe kids might probably need more nutrition. They probably
Yeah.
might need the meat because they're growing, right? So again,
Yeah.
that's where the balance and the knowledge, the information you're providing to parents
Mm-hmm.
will help them.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is in our program, and even as in my work as a physician, I never push for any particular diet. So, there's no particular diet. It's really about lifestyle change and having a balance in food. We need our healthy carbs, we need our fiber, we need our protein, we need a healthy amount of fat, but it's about portion control too, right? Portion control. One of the challenges, as I said earlier, is that people consume too much, refined sugar. And so it's not the right carbs. It's not that we can't have carbs. We should. We should be
Sure.
getting our carbs, but healthy. Better to eat the potatoes than all that sugar that's in that cookie, right? So, yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. Okay, awesome. So I wanted us to transition talking about your book. You had mentioned that earlier. Can you tell us about your book and everything? Yeah.
Yeah, one of my first book is called Live to Give, and it's a memoir. Within that book, I have a chapter that dedicates to the creation of my nonprofit called Faithful to Fitness. And really, when we go back to the faith, how I felt like God put the right people in my life that said yes to volunteering and contributing to the formation. People who would, whenever I talk to them about my vision, my blueprint, what I envisioned for the nonprofit, they came up and said, "How can we help you?" Not like, "Hey, what's in it for me?" Right? And so, that's my first book. And then I went on to co-author two other books. One is called The Confidence of Yes, and the other one is called Overcoming Mediocrity, Epic Women. And I just had a book signing yesterday for that. So the co-authored books became Amazon bestsellers, one in January of 2023 and the other one in October of 2023. But in my third book, I shared stories of how there was success. Many of the kids and parents that just were grateful to get 12 weeks per program to make that difference. And also, we gave out scholarships for children that attended 80%. So they missed only 2 out of 12 weeks. And they got scholarships to be at the gym and for an extra 3 months. And they could do any kind of workout with parents, and kids and parents were thankful that they lost together 30 to 40 pounds. Over about a month. I had one child who spoke at a 5K event we have every August called Fight Obesity Walk with Me. And he shared how he started out with a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, and just being in a program after a year and a half, he was able to drop his labs, from like full-blown diabetes to just borderline, pre-diabetes, and getting off injections of insulin at 14 years old. So imagine that at 14 years old, being able to say, because of the program that was free from a doctor who formed a nonprofit, I no longer have to inject myself with insulin. Even his endocrinologist was like, "What happened? What did you do here?" Because not only was he eating healthier, making healthier choices with the help of the dietitian, but being more active made your body more sensitive to the insulin that he was injecting. And eventually he gradually just didn't need as much. And then the endocrinologist was like, we can go off of it. And so, and he already had a brother who had a different type of diabetes, who was dependent on the insulin for the rest of his life. So it was very tough on the mother to have two sons who were injecting insulin and getting the sugars checked constantly. So, those are just like small changes, small stories that I always say, even if you make an impact on one child, that one child, it's like you're making the impact for him, for his whole world, for the rest of his life. So I don't count, how many people did I impact. I count, did I make an impact? And one child at a time, right? One family at a time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so nice and impressive. I'll love to see your book. So if you don't mind sending me the title, so I can also include it in the description box of this video,
Yeah.
so that people,
Yeah.
and so where can they be found? On Amazon?
The easiest place, because I have a website. It's
Mm-hmm.
mdkatrina.com. When you
Okay,
go there,
MD
there's,
Katrina.
yeah, mdkatrina.com. And when you go there, there's a icon that looks like the book. You click on that,
Mm-hmm.
it has all of my books there. All three of my books are there. And it will link you to the Amazon or other website. But I put it all there so it's just easier to find. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. That would be a nice Christmas gift for like maybe a mom and, maybe a new
Yeah.
mom,
Definitely, yeah. I mean, my
Yeah.
memoir is, it's called an Live to Give, an inspirational memoir about freedom, faith, and selflessness. So it's really
Mm,
my whole journey from coming here as a refugee and all the struggles my family faced, and then my journey becoming a doctor, forming a nonprofit, and times where I felt like other people or God was calling other people to help me with my goals, and then times I felt called to help other people and inspiring a sense of generosity, because when we look at our life and we have gratitude, we're going to be more generous.
true.
So for those who really enjoy kind of memoir and faith-based type of content, the memoir would be very helpful and appropriate, and
Helpful.
probably would enjoy it. Most people
Okay.
can read my memoir in about 3 days, is because they
Oh,
say
really?
they can't put it down. That's the feedback I get. The other two
Okay.
books are co-authored books with all women authors, and so if you're looking for inspirational stories from women, why they said yes to their career and how they
Mm-hmm.
overcame challenges to be successful. So that may be the niche for people who are looking for just inspirational women author stories. Yeah.
I love that. I love listening to people's like successful people's stories. So I'm sure I probably be drawn to the first and the second, like the two you just mentioned. I'll definitely plan to check those out.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
I'll
you.
plan to check those out. Yeah. So what are you working on now? And do you have any projects you're working on? And do you have any plans for moving this nonprofit further beyond
hmm
Illinois?
hmm Yeah, that's my goal. I have a my nonprofit is trademarked with an attorney
Hmm.
in Atlanta,
Okay.
and we have a licensing agreement that's written up. And so certainly anybody out there in their community who's passionate about fitness and helping with the childhood obesity epidemic and reversing that, reach out to me and I will give them the blueprint and sign a licensing agreement to help them create that in their community.
Okay.
I am working with a company that will eventually go public, probably in the next few months, and they probably will assist me in some way to expand it as well. So that's one thing I'm working on. Doing a lot of podcasts and also working on a children's book with my
Nice.
first publisher, focused
Okay.
on really, how we cope with grief and loss, but for
Mm.
children. And I lost my first pet in October 2021. My
Oh,
father passed away in April of 2018, and my mom passed away in December of 21. So all of that together, all those experiences, brought me to focusing on writing about grief and how I coped with it. And
mm-hmm.
then I got invited by my first publisher to think about how I can turn that into a children's book. So I sent in my first draft for that, and they're kind of working on an illustrator and bringing it all together. So we'll see. Hopefully in 2025, but we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. That would be good.
And
That would be
I'm
nice.
doing lots of podcasting and looking to
Okay.
apply for different like live events, to share my nonprofit work, the passion for generosity, and encouraging people to be more generous with their time, talent, and treasure. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So, funny question, and I probably should have asked earlier. How do you get funded for your nonprofit? Do you do everything out of pocket? Do you get funding? And how can people support you? Maybe
hmm
someone watching that wants to support what you're doing. How can they
hmm
reach you?
Yeah. So my nonprofit, the website is faithful, the number two, and then
Mm-hmm.
fitness.org.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a Facebook page, so
Mm-hmm.
facebook.com/faithful2fitness. So they can donate. Certainly, if they live locally, they can reach out to me through that webpage and email
Mm-hmm.
me if they have certain talent and skills. Whether they're a
Mm-hmm.
fitness instructor, chef, they do something in culinary, if they have a farm, if they're a
Mm-hmm.
dietitian. They just want to come exercise and motivate families, so
Mm-hmm.
those are little ways that you can give your time and your talent. As far as funding, it's privately funded, so not grant, not through any foundation. One of my uncles on my mom's side passed away in 2012, and he was never married, had no children. So he left a huge trust that has helped many charities, not just mine. So every December, lots of funds from his trust is sent out to charities that support things related to faith and life and children and education. He was an orphan. He was the only child. And so, nothing to give away, like I said. And he really inspired me towards writing and sharing about generosity, because it reminded me when he passed, it's like, can't take anything you have. You earn all this, but you can't take it. So make a difference either while you're here or much later. So I went on, and because of him, I also founded 2 charity funds when my mom and dad passed away. So each of them has a charity fund that will help sponsor my work and other charities that I'm passionate about as well. So I feel like if you don't rely on, government or grants, you're not as limited on how you help people. And also because you have to look at the need for your community. You don't know until you encounter people's challenges where you can help. And so I think it's nice that it's privately funded, so we can reach out and help people as they need it. Yeah.
That's true. Wow. God bless your uncle. God bless him.
Yeah.
May he
His
so continue to rest in peace.
and his death anniversary is coming up on November 20th. So we remember him, his birthday in June and his death anniversary. So we recall it was like very close to Thanksgiving, every year. It's like, how can you forget, right? So I say on his tombstone, I had this, after he passed, I had this inscription. It says, "A lifetime of simplicity, a legacy of generosity." Because that's really embodies who he is, right? So
making an impact. Like, it's been over 10 years and still making an impact with his, oh wow.
Wow. Yeah.
That's nice. Thanks so much for sharing that. I feel so inspired. Thanks.
Well, thank you.
And then in rounding off, do you have any last words for our listeners, and where can people find you? Do you have like personal, social presence, to social media and all that? How can people find you? And any last words for our listeners?
Yeah, so my website is probably the easiest, mdkatrina.com. From there, you'll be able to connect to my nonprofit. You'll also be able to see many YouTube videos of different podcasts and live events, and get my books. And I also do telemedicine for my Catholic doctor, faith-based group. So those are different ways. I have the YouTube channel. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. So it's just under Dr. Katrina Nguyen. So very easy to find. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Good. That's awesome. Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Katrina. I really appreciate your presence here. I've been so inspired by your story and the wonderful work you're doing, serving the community selflessly. God bless you. And I hope and I pray, that God increases you, like just stretches you out in so many, I think in my pastor usually says that we should pray to be God's hand, stretched out arms and feet or something. I'm not saying it right.
Be like Saint Teresa of Calcutta said, be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ.
Of Jesus, right? Yes.
Yep.
Spread out across the cities, across the nations, just helping people, bringing awareness to childhood obesity, because we need our children. Our children are the future. They're wonderful, and we need to feed them right, so that they grow up healthy, heal, and be able to fulfill their purpose in this world. So thank you so much, Dr. Katrina.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, to share the story and be an inspiration to other people. And hopefully one day I'll hear somebody reach out and say, hey, I want to start the Faithful to Fitness in my community, right? Yes. Or I read the book and I'm so inspired, I want to do what she's doing. And because I can't really clone myself, but there's somebody out there that has the same passion, and I'm looking forward to meeting that person.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Thank you so much for inspiring us.
Thank you. God bless you as well.
Yes, thank you. God bless you. Okay, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your support. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, subscribe, comment, leave us a review, and please keep coming back for more wonderful content. We appreciate you. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye-bye.